Good morning. Hey, I'm Steve Weber. Welcome to the American Gumption Morning Show. Today is show number 217, and it is Wednesday, September 22nd. And I have not been here for a couple of weeks, so let me just briefly explain. There has been multiple behind the scenes things that have been going on, and I'm not ready to publicly share what they are, but they're all good. And I'll just give you a little bit of a hint. One has to do with a sponsor that will be part of this show going forward. And, I'll be working, regularly with that sponsor. And so I'm excited to bring that news to you. And that'll be coming real soon. But that's been kind of the main thing that I've worked on the last couple of weeks. But additionally, there's some reformatting in the show and some focus of what the show may or may not be about. That's a little bit less defined, but I do believe that's in the pot of stew, simmering on the back burner and bubbling up and getting warm and getting closer to reveal that too. So for the meantime, what I'll be doing just going forward is doing a show at least a couple times a week. And it'll just be with guests primarily. So if there's no guest, I'm probably not going to be doing a show. But when there is a guest, then I will be doing a show. And I would expect 2 or 3 shows a week on average, for the next couple of weeks until all of this other stuff bubbles up and solidifies. And then we'll, announce what's going to be probably a more regular ongoing basis. So in a bit of state of flux at the moment, but that's all good. And so I wanted to share that with everybody since I had not been here for a few weeks. So anyway, all good. All righty. So today I have a monologue prepared and I have a guest. Julia Stubbe is coming back. She was here 3 weeks ago today, and she's going to join us at about 15 past the hour. And we're going to talk about the session that I had with her last week. And it really is about the healing via access to the 33 sacred portals of the spine. And so I'll get into the session, and we're going to talk about the specifics of how it kind of went and what happened what I discovered and what I learned and how she works. And we'll just talk about that on and kind of describe what it is so that you will want to work with Julia because she is fantastic and I really enjoyed it. All right, so that's coming up in just a couple minutes. Now, the monologue for today is can't compete on smart. And so I'm going to get into that. I'm going to share my screen. I think we're all set to go in terms of announcements. I do have a show. Well, before I get into that, let me just tell you what's happening. So I do have a guest tomorrow. Sean Bracey is going to join us, and we're going to talk about creating he's got a production company. And so if you're a content creator, like I'm a content creator, if you're creating content, we're going to talk about how to create good content or how to make some production value to it. I've tried with this show to have some production value with it. But Sean and his business, Motivational Music, is really all about adding production value to any type of content that you make on a regular basis. And specifically, he works with speakers and people with an inspirational or a motivational message. So that's coming up tomorrow. And then next Tuesday, Sarah Sparks, and next Friday, Robert Palmer. I'll tell you more about those tomorrow. But anyway, so we're going to be doing, like I said, probably 2-3 shows on average the next few weeks as this whole kind of transition period that the American Gumption Morning Show is in. So all good, not disappearing, had disappeared for a few weeks, but all necessary things happening behind the scenes. All right, let's leave it at that. All right, so I can't compete with smart. Let me share my screen because I'll just use that to kind of guide me through this. Now, this is a topic that I have talked about multiple times before, and it has to do with the strong suits, and it has to do with the, you've heard the roller skating rink story, and you've heard the delusions of grandeur story, but you never heard the can't compete with smart story. So let's go ahead and just jump right into this. So strong suits, what are they generally? It's basically your 3 primary ways of being, and this is what I learned back in 2009 through about 2013, when I was doing some personal development work with an organization, Landmark Development. And so this was their concept and this is their idea, but I like it, and so I'm sharing it. But basically, it's your strong suits are your three primary ways of being, and their theory is that each of these strong suits develop out of a trauma event that happened at a specific time period in a young person's life, and then those become blind spots. And so there's a trauma event, and then there's a certain way that you decide you're going to be, and then that becomes essentially a subconscious automatic way that you operate and function in your life. And most of your success comes from you operating that way, but also you end up with lots of frustrations or annoyances or anger or just like things that don't work. And their theory is that you're trying to operate in your strong suit, but it's not working, because obviously we need more than just three ways to function and operate effectively in this human form as we interact with other humans. And so anyway, so this is kind of the quick overview of what the strong suit means. Now let's go ahead and jump back here. So here are the three strong suits. One happens when you're a child, basically at age 3 to 7 years old, somewhere in that time frame. And essentially what happens is it's like your first beginning of consciousness, where you go, oh my gosh, something's wrong here. I'm not fitting in the way I thought I was supposed to. Because up until that point that you develop some type of consciousness, you're just like happy-go-lucky, joyful thing. But then all of a sudden something happens and you go, oh my gosh, something's wrong here. And then as a preteen, it's more like you're not fitting in. And so that was the roller skating ring story. That was my trauma. And then, of course, I chose to be independent and live my life independently. And then as a young adult, at age 22, when I was out in California, my first job that was not working with my father. I had worked in the safety and cocoon of working under his tutelage right out of high school for 4 years. And then I was out on my own, and the trauma event was the delusions of grandeur story, where my boss told me, you're suffering from delusions of grandeur. And I went, oh my gosh, what's that mean? And I looked it up and I went, oh, that's not good. And so anyway, that was when I became analytical. My goodness. All right. So here is, it's hard to see, but just basically the three strong suits that I have. The top one, social. I chose to become a social creature because I wasn't smart enough, or I couldn't compete on smart. And then independent, and that was the roller skating rink story. And then analytical was the delusions of grandeur story. All right. So I'll just go through each of those briefly, but here's the first one. The smart was already taken, and basically at around the age of 5 years old, I decided that I couldn't compete on smartness. And the reason why I chose, or the reason why I decided that, is that I have a brother 7 years older and a sister 5 years older, and I remember my parents saying, oh, they're smart. Oh, they're smart. Oh, they're smart. Oh, they're good students. Oh, they're smart. They're smart. And I was like, geez, how am I going to compete on smart with smart when they're already smart and I'm 5 years old and they're 12 and 10 years old, and how do I compete with that? So I thought, I'll become a social creature. I'll with an emphasis on charm, and so that became my strong suit, social or charm. And so communication. Now, here's the beauty of this. Communication is a wonderful skill, and so this is really my strong suit, and learning how to, I use it today in communicating with my interviewees. I used it big time when I was sitting on the bench as Forrest Gump, interacting with people. So you need these social skills are wonderful, but that underlying smart is the kind of that's the bugaboo. It's like, oh, am I smart enough, or that sort of thing. So then the second strong suit is independent, and that was the roller skating rink, when essentially I became I became the boyfriend of this popular girl, and then I unbecame the boyfriend, and I had no idea why I became the boyfriend, and I had no idea why I unbecame the boyfriend. Essentially, she was choosing, and I was just playing along with it, but anyway, that hurtful experience basically said, I don't need anybody. I'm just going to be independent. I don't, and so I've lived my life very independently. Anybody who knows me knows that that's certainly independent. Again, not a bad thing, but independent doesn't necessarily allow for close relationships. All righty, we'll leave it at that. And then the last one is the delusions of grandeur. And that was when I was 22 years old. I'm out there working for the first time really on my own, out of the safety of my family environment, my parents, my father, who I had worked with I worked with him during high school and then out of high school for 4 years. And so this was my first job, and this happened in the first year where I was working with them, and they called me into the office and they said, hey, you're suffering from delusions of grandeur. You think you're more important than you really are. We need you to settle down, young man. And I went, oh my gosh, I had no clue that was coming to. I got whacked on the side of the head with that. And I went, I need to cross all my T's and dot all my I's. I will be analytical from this day forward. And I have lived a very analytical life. And of course, what happened was I lost touch with my inner self, my inner knowing, and I stopped trusting myself, my connection to higher source, to higher power. And I had that. I still had an inner knowing, but I didn't trust it. I gave up on it. So I've been relearning to do all that. So now, just back to this idea, these 3 strong suits. This was this was in December of 2013 that I really pieced this all together. I had started this work in 2009. I had all the pieces of the puzzle kind of laid out in front of me, but the idea of the strong suits came through crystal clear, loud and clear. And I went, oh, I'm a social creature. I'm independent and I'm analytical. And it's because of this. So I kind of got very, very clear on all of that. And here's kind of the punchline for this particular monologue and for the interview that I'm going to conduct with Julia in just a minute or two, and then really what I discovered during the session that we did last week, because it's very interesting how these things come up and reveal themselves. So I had worked very much on the independent and the analytical all those years ago. I looked at social, my first strong suit, as not really a problem area. The blind spot that I had around being independent and the blind spot that I had around being analytical, and those stories behind where they came from, like when I realized that back in 2013, I mean, it was like a whack on the side of the head again. Like I was like, oh my God, and then it made perfect sense. Those were like the major stories. The social one, where I'm not smart enough, I couldn't compete with my older siblings. That never seemed like such a big deal to me. So that's really, and here it is again. Smart was already taken. I was 5 years old. Can't compete on smartness. So I basically made the decision that I'll just be more of a social creature, and I'll charm people and get my way. That's how I'll compete in life. So that was really the whole thing. And the reason why, again, I'm sharing this is because Julia and I stumbled into this, not planning to do it during our session together. And so we'll just kind of pick it up from there. I'm gonna stop the screen share. Let's go ahead and remove that. There we go. And I will bring Julia I'm going to put the banner up here. There she is. So now we have juliastubbe.com, and let's see if Julia's here. Hi, Julia.
Hi, Steve. How are you doing?
Good. Welcome back. Thanks for joining me again.
Thanks for having me back. I appreciate it.
Yeah, you're very welcome. We had a fun conversation last week, and I wasn't. I was like, I just went into it with an open mind, and I thought, hey, let's just do this and see what comes up. And I guess, before we get into that, just give an overview, like generically, not what we talked about, but from your perspective, tell people what you typically do in a regular communication or a session that helps people, and how we started out. Would you just sort of paint that big picture?
Sure, I can do that. One of the things I wanted to say is that my connection to source, and I connect, I also connect with Anchor and Earth. So it's about that and working with my higher teams. as far as that goes, and getting out of my own way. So whatever information comes through, I can accept it. And I just want to bring up, because when we had our session on Saturday, you had physical things you wanted to deal with. So I put them on the clipboard, what I call the etheric or the spiritual clipboard. And then I get out, we connected, I get out of my way, and then spirit shows me what we're going to work on and how we're going to work through it. So every session's different. And because I'm not doing anything, I'm just a conduit for the energy and the information, magic can happen. So it doesn't matter what the process is. It's like you can put stuff on the clipboard, but if your higher self is ready to work on something else like it was, it's going to come through and say, well, hello, here I am, 5-year-old Steve. And it could be anything. So it's just, I think getting out of my own way is really the huge thing about it, to allow what spirit source information wants to bring.
That's great. And that's really what happened. You did give some basic, simple instructions, though, to me, and I assume you give them to all the clients. Do you want to just sort of tell what was the what was the homework or the preparation that we were to do beforehand? Very simple, but
yeah, you just want to set your intention.
Yep.
And I always ask that you get in a nice, comfortable place where you're not disturbed. You set your intention. You make sure you have a glass of water, nearby, because water's really, sometimes it's like you just really need to drink because it's like you're releasing so much, and where you're not going to be disturbed. And that's easy. I can always give more homework in other areas when I'm guided to, but that's the preliminary. And then when we get on, I usually explain how I work, because I don't really do anything, and I don't like the label healer, because I'm not healing anybody. I just am a conduit for the information. You are actually healing yourself. So
right.
I empower you to empower yourself to heal. And I just, like I said, and then sometimes it's like I'm guided to share a video or share an exercise after the fact. As far as that goes, the spirit brings something up and says, hey, this would really benefit this person. So it's like I'll write that in my notes, and I'll say, and then I'll send that to them after the session's passed, as far as that goes, if it's a link or a document or something. But
Great.
you didn't have any afterwards homework, because you were doing this.
Right. So I will share in just a minute what my intentions were, and then we'll kind of go through, that'll be but before we do that, and so I guess what I'm just saying is I'm gladly going to reveal or share what the intentions that I had, and then we'll go through that process of how it all worked. But before we do that, I labeled this show the Healing Via Access to the 33 Sacred Portals of the Spine. Now, I had not heard of the 33 sacred portals of the spine prior. Would you be willing to just share what they are, so that people who don't have an idea what they, tell them what it is? What are these?
Right. Well, the spine is the central point for connecting our physical and spiritual energetic bodies. Okay, so there's that. And I take classes, I read, spirit brings me information. So I read a lot of different books, and spirit might say something in this book, and it's like, okay, and it might be labeled something different than what I'm being guided that it's called. So I want to give credit to Cindy Dale, CYNDIDALE. She writes a lot of books on chakras. She's amazing. And I just learned so much. But what she does with what I read this, I was looking for something else. I was looking for the chakras of the brain. And I'm like, I've never heard of the chakras of the brain. What exactly are they? So I have like several of her books, and I pulled out this book, and I couldn't find anything on chakras of the brain in the book, but I found these key points of the spine. And my guide, Source, said, we want you to work with this. We want to show you how to utilize this. So I saw them as portals. She called them points. I see them as portals, and they run up and down the spine. The spine has 3 layers. The outer layer is your growth. The inner layer is the mental. And then the internal is the pure spirit. So when you're connecting with that, we open that up so that you can get that pure spirit open up through, and we clear any blockages. So for example, oh, let me just pick one. Let me put my glasses on and see what I'm doing. So clarity is like the T5, I believe. Yeah, it's through your thoracic. And so we would ask, I would channel however we want to clear these blockages, whatever shows up. It could be through a colored ray, it could be through releasing programs, it could be going to your past life, it could go any direction as far as that goes. Like with you, I was surprised because it took us to your 5-year-old with one of the ones, and I wasn't expecting that. So we clear it out, and then we connect with source and your divine blueprint, and we bring those keys and codes. We would bring those keys and codes of that clarity through into that central point, that divine, where the divine spirit is, and allow those keys and codes to like run up and down that whole spine where that is, and then activating the keys and codes in your current DNA to reawaken them. Mm-hmm. And sometimes it works on a physical level, sometimes it works on a spiritual level or emotional level. I have no idea. I was always surprised at how it shows up. So, and it doesn't take long to do the whole process, but the process is so magical and so powerful, and I'm always amazed at the results. I really am.
Yeah.
Does that answer your question?
And I don't want to go too far into the weeds with this, but I have I want to do a screen share one more time because I have a picture I found of the spine, and I'm going to just show, like, up at the top there's the C, really up in the neck, the C 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then down at the bottom there's the lumbar, the L1s through L5s, and in the middle in this particular. But basically there's a total of 24.
Yeah, but we work with the sacrum and the coccyx too.
Right. So you added the idea that not only is there's this external, and then there's an internal, and what was the third one? Or
you mean the layers of the spine?
Yeah, the 3 areas that you said. You said that the center was the spiritual, and then what was?
And then there's mental, and then the outer layer is your growth.
Okay, so the reason why I just wanted to share this, and we're not going to do a whole lot with this, is that essentially in this particular picture, it looks like there's 24, and this is more like a chiropractic vision of it. This isn't yours, but so there's this 24, vertebrae, and yet there's 33 portals. So you're
right, because we work with the sacral, the actual sacral down at the sacrum,
mm-hmm.
and there's 5 portals in there.
Okay.
And then the coccyx area, there's another 4. And then
okay.
And then right at the top, where what I call that C1.
Yep.
That's where I call that like the wholeness of God that comes through there. So that's pretty amazing as far as that goes.
So the only reason why I really wanted to share it is that as we went through it, we ended up identifying 4 particular areas that you worked with me on, and each of those 4 you would give like it's like basically like a C1 or a C4 or C5, and then you would also say, it's the sacred portal number, and you would give those numbers. And so I'm just adding the fact that it's not a one-to-one directly, but it's kind of similar.
Yeah, and I don't have any preconceived notions of what shows up, because you had stated that you were having issues with your neck.
Yep. That
it automatically took me to that cervical.
Yep.
But then we also went down to your thoracic area at the end too, which was quite interesting as well.
Yes. So with that, let's go ahead and transition into I did my homework. I showed up with an intention, didn't I?
You did well.
Thank you. So my intention was I wanted to release what I perceived as stored up energy on the right side, my neck, basically from about the ear down to the top of the shoulder, and certainly into the shoulder. But basically I had this stiffness, and this developed when in March, when I was doing my drive across America. And I was changing my vision of what American Gumption should be, and I felt like I needed to go in a different direction with it, and I didn't know what that was, and I ended up going through a tapping exercise and with another guest, and it was, the hint came to me from that session that, gee, if I can't see where I'm going, then I have restricted movement in I'm not seeing the big picture, and I felt like that as I closed up, like, where am I going with this? And I'm feeling like I'm not seeing clearly the whole big picture. Then it was like it manifested into this like inability to physically move and to go. So anyway, this was kind of a cool thing. So that was the first part of it. But then my right knee has been bothering me for several years, and I equated that with not being able to move forward, with this vision and with this, overview of it. So those were the intentions that I showed up with.
Yep. That's all. And we put them on the clipboard.
Yep.
And then we hooked up.
Yep.
We anchored in earth. We run what I love this Apple flow energy as our toroidal field. We expanded that out, connected to source, brought in Martine's as far as that goes, working with Steve's team, whatever his higher self and what they want to tell me as far as that goes. And we're off.
Yeah. So what we ended up doing then next was we discussed and had a conversation about four specific parts. You went.
Well, actually, I was guided to go to the cervical area first.
Yes, you are.
And then after each point, I chose a different point after we worked with it.
So you didn't have it wasn't like
I only
just started out with one.
I just started out with one, and then when I was done that, they said, "Okay, let's do this one next." Right. And then when we're done that, they said, "Do this one next."
So the first one that we went to was essentially my C5. So not the very, very top of the neck, but a few vertebrae down. And you're calling that sacred portal number 29. And what was really beautiful about the session was that you have specific words for that represent things in your life that aren't coming through clearly. And so that very first word that we talked about was enjoyment. So enjoyment was being blocked in that area, and take it from there.
Yeah, so the enjoyment was what that portal is an opening to. So I just like, okay, so we want to remove the blocks. So what does that look like? And so we just worked on clearing the blocks. And I don't know, to be honest, Steve, I don't remember which one where your 5-year-old came through. So maybe you have notes on that.
I do, and that's going to come up. So we won't worry about that this
okay.
But
so we just go through the clearing process, and then we bring it in. And then it's like, and I just get, okay, it's time to go to the next one. I'm like, okay, what do we want to do next? And then they showed me the portal.
Oh, don't go there yet. Let's talk about removing blocks, because I had an Akashic record reading done several months ago, and this was really the first introduction I had to blocks. And blocks can be contracts, agreements, programming, hexes, curses. And so this was all language that I was familiar with. So I loved hearing that, because how do we end up making these contracts with others and with ourselves?
Right. Well, we do. Well, it's just by sometimes just by saying yes, or by not saying no. So what I do is that, and I'll just go, it's like I release any vows, contracts, hexes, curses, promises, any forces, anything of similar origin that might be holding these blocks in place. And sometimes it might go to an ancestral line. Sometimes it might be, might be cores. So I see what I see, because it's like, if it's not fully clear, if I'm seeing that it's not clear, it's like, okay, what else is there that I'm not seeing? Mm-hmm. And where do I go from here? So I'm always, it's like, as long as I see a block, I'm always asking, well, what else can I see? What else can I do here as far as that goes?
There's one other idea I want to introduce, because you brought it up, is the removing of false beliefs, which is maybe the same as a block, but maybe it's slightly different. And that's really essentially beliefs of others that we have taken on as our own beliefs.
Correct. That false belief or false programming. And one of the things I think I told you is that a belief, like a belief that we have, is just somebody else's opinion.
Yeah.
So somebody like our parents might have said, "Oh, you can't do that. You'll get hurt." So we believe that because we're a child, but that was just their opinion. Because how do they know if we would get hurt, or how do they know that it was a bad thing to do?
Right.
Or it's just, or it could be their programming from generation to generation, and that's just the way things are done. So it's just their opinion as far as that goes. So if we can relate that and shift that oh, it's just somebody else's opinion. I don't have to believe that. I can choose my own beliefs. I can make my own way. I can be my authentic self of what makes me feel that bliss, and that divinity and that wholeness within myself.
So a false belief around enjoyment could be that, hey, life is serious. Let's not play here. Let's not play around. This is serious stuff that we're dealing with. And, there's plenty of time for enjoyment, but let's postpone all enjoyment until we get the serious stuff taken care of.
Right. And sometimes parents say things just to like, like to get their child's attention, or to put fear in them. It's like they might not, as a parent, my son's 30 now, and it's like, there's just things, it's like for the most part, we had a really great relationship, but every once in a while I needed to get his attention. Like, okay, if you're not going to pick up your toys, you're not going to pick your stuff up, I'm going to put them in a box and I'm going to put them out in the front yard, and we'll see what happens to them. Well, the mother and me put the stuff in the trunk and put the box out with just one toy in it, so that when he went out, all the toys were gone except for the one. And then it's like, okay, so what? And then it's like, well, then you make it a lesson. What do you learn here? So did I traumatize him? I have no idea.
Right.
I know one incident where I did traumatize him, and he still talks about that, is that we were in TJ Maxx. He was 5 years old, and he found a little lock. The little locks from a luggage. They're just those tiny little locks. You know what I'm talking about? It was on the floor. It was on the floor. So he picked it up and we went home with it. And he found it. I said, "Where'd you get that?" He goes, "What was on the floor at the store?" I said, "So you took it. You stole it." I was like, because I just don't believe you should take things. That's my belief. It's my opinion that you shouldn't take things that aren't yours.
Right.
And so I called the manager of the store. I said, "I just want to teach a lesson here. So can you just have a talk with my son?" And I took him in. And from this day forward, he will refuse to go into a TJ Maxx. He refuses. And he reminds me, because I ruined him for life for that. And he was like 5 years old.
Right.
So,
right.
But I was trying to teach a lesson.
Right.
So it's like we don't always consciously like say, "Oh, I'm going to ruin the kid." He's not going to ever walk in there again. But it's something that I believe. So we inheritedly take some of the stuff that came from our parents and our caregivers, and we hold them. So if they're not useful anymore, it's about letting them go so that we can become more whole.
Right. So as a parent, let's put a little positive spin on this. We're just trying to teach the kid, discipline and, right and wrong in terms of just being a good citizen and, develop their own consciousness. And yet most of these things that you did kind of just bounce off of them and didn't cause any trauma.
Yeah. But I also remember a good incident. He was also 5 then. And this takes this a little story. It's funny, but it's like, so he had 2 girlfriends then, and he was going to have them live in separate houses because he was going to, have them both. And one of them we were at the community pool, and she's a little blonde. Her name was Taylor, and he was in the pool and he was flashing her and he was flashing her. And I could tell her, she was asking him to stop and he wasn't stopping. She was getting upset, continue to splash. So I had him come up and I said, "So what's going on there?" I go, "I see you," and he goes, "I'm playing." He goes, "I see you're splashing Taylor." He goes, "Yeah." I said, "Did she ask you to stop?" He goes, "Yeah." I said, "Well, why didn't you stop?" And he goes, "Because she likes it." So instead of telling him that he had to stop, I try to figure out why he was doing it. So he said she liked it. I said, really? And I stood up. I said, come on, we're going to go in the pool. And he knows his mother, even at 5. And I take a step forward. He takes a step forward and he takes a step back. He goes, why are we going in the pool? I said, oh, we're going to play. I'm going to splash you. And you're going to ask me to stop, but I'm going to keep splashing you. And I'm going to keep splashing you. And you're going to keep asking me to stop, but I'm not going to stop because we're going to play and you're going to like it. I don't think so. I said, so how do you think Taylor feels? Oh. I go, so what do you need to do? He goes, I need to go apologize at 5 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the way I taught, because I had to see it from his perspective.
Right.
So instead of just telling him, oh, you can't do that, or yell at him or make him sit because he's doing this, and he doesn't understand the reasoning. If his reality is that she really is having fun, that's his reality. As a parent, I chose a lot of times to go into his reality to see the way things were from his perspective. So I hope, for the most part, I didn't do TJ damage for the rest of his life. But for that part of it, it's like I know, because it's like now he has empathy.
Beautiful.
And he tries to look at other people's perspective as well, because that's something that I showed him as a parent. And we had a good relationship growing up, because it's like not everybody got us.
Right. So back to bringing it back to, the portal, the C5, and the idea that there was this enjoyment. It's like some of these things are some of these beliefs that we take on are serve us and are good, and some of the beliefs that we take on are not serving us. And so really all that you were doing was attempting to help me clear out the beliefs and the energy that I took on as a 5-year-old, and it was time to let it go. And so what was really beautiful about it, and I did this in the monologue in the strong suits, is that I had never addressed the idea of the strong suits and the 5-year-old issue. This is the very first time that I'm really talking about it in any kind of a meaningful way. The other two, I talked them to death and, have gone through that whole thing. But they were the more important issues at that time. This one didn't feel that important. But maybe we're just guessing that, those other issues have been dealt with to the degree that I was now ready to deal with this
Correct.
particular one. So
yeah, it's the layers. Healing, it's like the layers of an onion. It's a process. It's not an event. So the more layers we peel off, the more we get to see. So the more we get to work on.
Yeah. So after we get through C5, that was the first one. You went to C2, which was sacred portal number 32. And what was the messaging behind that? What did you?
That was grace.
Yeah. So talk about grace.
So what does grace mean to you?
Well, it's funny. My whole message is personal responsibility equals gumption, and it's personal responsibility for the way you think, act, and interact with others. And the third one, interacting with others, I call graciousness. So I have a very strong definition of what grace means. It's essentially it's the way I want to show up and be with other people on a regular basis.
Now, was this the portal where the 5-year-old came up?
I think it came up after this one. It was at the very end of this conversation that it came up. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it just was a matter of who knows how it really works, because I don't know how it works with you as far as the dynamics go. I don't know. Sometimes I see people's ripples, and sometimes I see results, and sometimes you might notice something different of how how grace shows up in your life.
Sure.
So what I'm getting now is about having grace with yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Is to really allowing you to have that relationship of compassion and grace with Steve, as opposed to just being gracious with everybody else.
Mm-hmm. And so maybe I have not been as gracious with myself. I learned how to be externally gracious, but I haven't always been as kind and gentle and gracious with myself. And that certainly, we're all hard on ourselves, and
we're a lot of times we are.
I'll plead guilty to that. So as we had that conversation and you did the clearing, that's when the 5-year-old kind of came up, and you just kind of blurted out, I'm seeing a 5-year-old. Does that mean something to you, Steve? And of course, it meant quite a bit to me because I had done all this other work, but here was that 5-year-old story just sort of sitting there that had never really been dealt with, but it never felt like it was, time to deal with it. So suddenly here we are in our session and boom, we're right into it.
Yes. So we were, I have you imagine seeing your 5-year-old in front of you and what's going on. And then you told me about the relationship with,
Older brother and sister.
Your older brother and sister, and not being able to compete on smart.
Right. So in the limited 5-year-old mind, I went, gee, and parents had said, hey, they're smart. Oh, they're good students. Oh, they're smart. And so here I am going, well, how am I ever going to catch up with them? I mean, they're 7 years and 5 years older than me, and they already got a head start. I'll never catch up. And so, from a strong suit point of view, I said I will focus on being more of a social creature. I'll make that my secret sauce into success in life. And so that's how I became. But smartness was always like, gee, am I smart enough, kind of thing.
Yeah. So we worked on. From what I can remember, we worked on clearing those beliefs about what smart really was and how you identified with it. And then I believe that we worked with the energies of the Akash to clear any vows, contracts, etc., with your brother and your sister.
Absolutely.
That's about all I got in my memory right now. So you might want to share it from your memory.
Well, that's when we went into the C4, which was sacred portal number 30, which was forgiveness, and was really about self-forgiveness for that, for
making that choice, to choosing that reality.
And for interacting with them and putting them in a kind of our relationship in kind of an awkward situation where it then turned into like kind of a competitive thing with my brother. Now, when you said that, I was like, well, gee, I wasn't competitive with my brother. He was 7 years older. He was in a different thing. And yet I've since reflected on it. I followed in his footsteps, and in terms of like things he did, I did, and I had to do them better, kind of thing, or at least as good.
Wow.
And I hadn't pieced that together until
because I saw that big competitiveness when we were working with the energies. I remember seeing that was a competitive relationship as far as that goes. So the fact that it's like you said, it's like you reflected on it, and it's like, oh yeah, I can see that now. It's like it's something we don't always recognize. So that's why Source, your higher self, says, well, let's just talk about that. And it's like, so I'm always amazed, like, because I might not get your reflection back as a client, or you might not even put it together. But the fact that you're putting together that's like, for me, it gives me more spiritual confidence. I mean, I'm pretty confident with what comes through because I get out of my own way, but it just always makes me smile.
One of the things that I think anybody who works with you is going to benefit from is the idea of the recording, because so much information comes so quickly, and the egoic self likes to, defend. And so when we hear something the first time, we kind of like cringe a little bit and we go, oh, that can't be true. And so like with the competitiveness, I'm trying to be open. I'm like, oh, that's not right. There's no way I was competitive with him because, when he was 12 years old, I was 5. And when he was 18, I was, whatever I was, I was younger. So there was no like direct competition. But then I thought about like when he went into high school, he did certain things, and then I did the same kind of things. And, it was real interesting. And it was almost like, oh my gosh.
Well, one of the things is like, I've learned to just, because I get out of my own way, I say what I say now, whatever comes through. But when I was first starting out to building my spiritual confidence, it's like Source would say these things, and I would be like, I can't say that. I'm not saying that to the client. Nope, I'm not saying that. And they would I would just like hear it and hear it and hear it. So it's like, so I finally would say those things, and then the client would say, oh, that's this, and this. And I'm like, oh. So then I started like the 3 rule. I'd have to hear it 3 times before I say it. And now it's like, so over 25 years of, really connecting with Source, it's like, I trust whatever comes through me now, whether it's.
anybody thinking of working with Julia, be cautious that her filter is very thin. It doesn't. It's not like.
Yeah, yeah. It's like there's really no place to hide. That works in my relationships too. So there's no place to hide because it's like once we're connected and you give permission, it's like that. It just comes through. But I just want you to know, it's like Steve, listened to it, the recording, and he took notes. It's like after your session, I barely remember anything.
Yeah.
If I didn't write it down or take a little note with it, I barely remember anything because it's all being channeled through source, through me, whatever it is. So I don't know. It's like when, Steve was asking me, we were talking about this, is like, I don't know what we did next. What did we do there? I have some notes here. Well, maybe that'll help me. But
so
you know more what happened than I do.
Absolutely. So another confirmation that we were on the right track with the 5-year-old is that at some point you said something's happening at 11 years old. Well, at 11 years old was the roller skating rink, the decision that I made to be independent. And that was really the big monster story. That was the one that affected my life most strongly. And once that like light bulb went off and I could see that as just a story, everything kind of changed. And so we didn't go into it much, but I just wanted to share with you that the confirmation of first it was the 5-year-old, which really was the story that needed to be worked on. And then when you went to the 11-year-old, it was like, oh, that's the monster story. That's the one that started all this darn thing. And so we didn't go into it much other than to, Now, one of the things that you did do is, we talked about, did we talk about the Sacred Portal 30 forgiveness? I think we did.
Yeah, we just brought that through, like, again, clearing blocks, bringing that in, allowing you to forgive yourself, forgive others, but really have compassion and forgive yourself for the choices you made as a 5-year-old. It's like, you did what you did, or as an 11-year-old, you just made those choices based on your reality and what you were programmed. It's like, we're just doing the best we can. So to release that guilt and to give forgiveness is huge, because that allows us to really grow.
In my work with others that I've been doing, and mostly it's more like interviewing people, I just see over and over again the idea of self-forgiveness being one of the most important things that, as during this lifetime human experience, that if we can learn that, things get a whole lot easier once that gets processed. So the fact that was brought up seemed to fit the overall need for it. So then the last portal that we ended up working with was what you called the S5, and on that chart that I showed it, I'm assuming it correlates more with the L5, the lumbar, but it was Sacred Portal number 8, and it had to do with time.
No, hold on. No, it's actually in the sacral, not the lumbar.
Okay, so you were saying S5. I didn't know what that meant. I'm assuming.
Well, that's because I was not in my head.
Okay.
But it was like this. It was like the 5th point of the sacral.
Okay.
Which is below the lumbar.
Below the lumbar. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's
actually the first segment of that sacral, right after, it's right below the L5.
Okay.
So it's right in that area.
Okay.
So when I'm channeling, it's like I don't always know the exact details of what I'm doing.
Yeah.
I just get guided, and it's like, because I should have wrote S1 down, but I wrote S5 because I was just I was not in my head. I was just, and whatever it came through, it was about, because it was the frequencies and the vibrations of time.
Yeah.
And that's all that really matters. So it was our attention to go there.
So I'm glad we got there. It doesn't matter where it's down below. Okay, great. So focus on the time aspect, because that is the most important piece of it. And you did share quite a bit about like what that means. I guess, and the short version is that, we can go back and look at time as a 5-year-old, and we can kind of rethink how we want those memories to be, or we can look at time in the present moment. So expand on that. And when you say the time portal, what does it mean to you, and what does it mean to people listening?
Well, for me, because I don't really remember about your session directly, but for me, like when I'm channeling time, it's like there is no time or space. So it's all happening now. So if we go back to the 5-year-old, the 11-year-old, and we clear that and we heal that, you know, and we give that forgiveness, and that's like a domino effect that comes into your now, the adult Steve. So it affects us as far as that goes. So time, so it was allowing you not to be analytical in time, but to really be open to the quantum theories of time, that nothing, it's just all happening at the same time, everything we're doing. So I think it was more about bringing that information and allowing your body, your physical body, your energetic, your spiritual body, to embrace that concept. So when we awaken your keys and codes that pertain to time and they work through your body, your whole body shifted. It just changed because it was like allowing this new information to come, so that when you're working with yourself and you go work with your inner child at a future date, it's going to be so much easier and fluid of how it's going to flow into the adult. So that would be my perspective at this point.
Yeah, and really what it does is it opens the door to, I don't want to say, well, I could say time travel, but
I'd like time travel.
Okay. And so the idea is that we have a memory of something. There's nothing that prevents us from going back to that foundational time that it occurred, or foundational memory, and rewriting that memory,
Correct.
reprogramming it. And what will then happen is that will move, the new memory will move all the way through the memories that occurred between that incident and the current time. And it's almost like this naturally, because I forget what they call that, but it's like that's like kind of rewriting the timelines of things.
Yeah, and one of the trippy things, I have to tell you this because this was trippy, and it wasn't with your session, but I was working on somebody else's session, and we were working in the Akash. Okay. And I work with the energies of the Akash. But we came to, and every once in a while we get a story. So we had a story where, and the situation was grim for this person. So we time traveled back to that person in that lifetime, back to their child, and did inner child healing within that past life, and then allowed other options or other choices for that child to make. And then when we went forward in that lifetime again, everything had changed and shifted. Yeah. I was like, whoo, that's interesting. Because it's like, I still remember the first time that happened, and I was like, wow, that's really trippy how that works.
So if we go back to the very beginning, the intention that I set, and that was like, okay, I have this physical,
by the way, how is your neck?
So here's how immediately I felt. Like the next day, I felt like I had a whole lot more movement. The stiffness of like where I was like wanting to like turn my whole body to move, like that was suddenly freed up. Now, what would happen is I as I went to different angles, I could feel the pain, but that was there even before this kind of thing, stiffness that happened. So it's a process, right? We're going to unwrap.
Right, but I want to do something with your neck now.
Okay, great. Let's do it.
Okay, so what we're going to do is I'm going to put my hands on your neck. I have my one hand on your neck, and now I'm going to go out into the quantum field, and we're going to go, and I'm going to find the place where your neck is mobile and supple and works with ease. And there it is. Now we're going to bring them together, smooth that out, bring it into the now. Now move your neck and see if what you notice is if it's different.
Yes, still feeling like when I get to the edges.
But you have a little bit more mobility there, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, so now I'm going to the back of your neck. I'm going to put my
Okay.
hand on the back of your neck, and I'm having my hand all the way on the back of your head. And now we're going to find the flexibility of your neck there, and the ease and the grace, and where all the vertebrae are functioning and working with each other, and the muscles, where they are really working with the muscles as well. And that's way over here. Now we want to smooth that out. Well, there's right there's a rough spot. And now we're going to bring that back into your neck. Now tell me what you notice.
Definitely more movement.
Go like this too.
Yeah, looser.
Yeah. So I go out to the quantum field of where you are, like where your neck's working really well.
Mm,
And we bring that into this field. So
yeah.
that's always I like playing in that world too.
So we're really coming kind of to the end, but I want to wrap
Okay.
up in a certain way. I felt like I knew, I believe that the physical ailment and restrictions that I had was based on energy that I was carrying with me. And I asked for your help in releasing that energy so that I would have more of a physical thing going on. But I knew that it was the mental energy that created it all. And the area that you worked was in that mental energy to relax it and release it. So I want to give a wholehearted endorsement to the work that you're doing. Anyone who has, and whether you want to come at it from a physical or a mental, I think you're doing essentially the same kind of work with the people. And I just want to endorse.
Yeah, I don't have, like I said, I don't have a preconceived notion of how I work, because it's like your higher self source gives me the information, but our brain, our mind forgets stuff.
Yeah.
Forgets things because it's like either too traumatic, or it's just something we don't want to deal with, or da da da. Our body holds on to everything.
Yeah.
Our body holds on to that, and it'll show up. It'll show up at different times in our life because there's a trigger that triggers it. And it's like, oh, so like when I get a body pain, I'm like, oh, I wonder where that's from. And then I just go through all the processes. Like, is this from now? Is this something I've done now? Or is this something that I've triggered and I need to look at it? And because I've have experiences when I was first doing where my body held on to a lot of amazing stuff, and it was scary, but I still chose to work through it because it's like I wanted to be whole.
During our session, I had, and I remember I commented and I heard it in the replay, that I had this deep inner feeling of unease, but what I interpreted that unease being was the releasing of energy. And as that was beginning to move, and one of the things, of course, you encourage is drinking lots of water. I understand that, it really is the water that will allow this energy to help pass through us, and physically, that like the residual stuff, but so it's kind of working on both. It's working on kind of the cosmic level, but it needs to be physically released from the body. So that water is so important. As I was driving on Sunday, I had about a 2-hour drive to where I ended up going, and I was aware of those same type of waves of release that were occurring, and they would have been in a different life, in a different mindset. They would have been scary moments, like, gee, what's going on? And yet I interpreted them as a positive and as a releasing that was going on. So I like this.
Awesome.
And
I like it too. It's fun.
I was doing it right now while just from that little session that you did with me, I could feel that same kind of thing. Of course, I'm talking, and that's not being quiet and just feeling it.
Yeah, well, and you just notice what you notice. It's like that's right. What I do. It's like I always like when I'm working with somebody like on the physical, I'm better at. I used to like, can I just touch you? Because it's like I would just, but now it's like okay, well maybe I don't have to touch you, but it's like because I can see things. I can see things in the body.
Yeah.
And It's like, or I'm, it's that knowing. It's like, I still, I have a friend, and it was just when I first met her. I said, and she was having trouble with her hips. I said, "Can I put my hands on you?" And she goes, "Okay," but she didn't really have a choice because I already had my hands on her butt, and I was like, I was playing with the energy like that. And when she was done, it's like the pain was gone. And she goes, "Okay, you can touch my butt anytime." Okay. But she was like, when I first did it, she was like, and so, but I've learned a little bit of discipline here and there, not always, but I can't help myself sometimes, because if somebody's in pain, it's like I I feel their pain with them because I'm highly empathic. So it's like a lot of times it's like it's almost, and I don't want to say selfish, but it's like I could either block it, or I can, like, if I release their pain, then I'm not gonna feel that
Yeah.
sometimes. So it's like, for me, it's like, so it can be a little selfish, I guess. I don't really want to program myself that way, but
As we conclude, juliastube.com is the website, right below us. Anybody who should go to your website, and for what reason should they contact you, and how do you help them?
well, they can whatever, if they're guided. Because it's like, if you feel like you're a match for my energy, and you resonate with any of this, then check out the website, and if it resonates, it resonates. I don't have any attachment as far as that goes. It's like, and I don't have any limitations because I'm not doing anything. So
Right.
anything you want to work on, we can work on, because I'm not doing it. It's like, I'm connected to your source. I get information from your highest of higher self, and that's what we work on, to allow, so I can empower you to take that information and heal yourself.
All righty. Well, thank you so much, Julia. This has been fun, and it was very, it was healthy. I would like to, we'll keep in touch. We'll have you back again, and
I
we'll
would love
continue
that. Thank you.
the conversation. But it's been, it's really quite fascinating. So I would just say, anybody who is doing this kind of energy work and needs some additional healing, there are lots of people who do it, and I'm going to just say they do something similar in very different ways. And so again, if what Julia is talking about resonates, then definitely,
Yeah, and it could be physical, it could be for your spiritual growth, it could
yeah,
be whatever. There's no limit. So whatever, it's like whatever shows up. And just like Steve brought up physical stuff. So if your higher self is ready to work on other stuff, be prepared, because it may show up. So that might be a little scary, but you could, instead of having fear, let's get excited, or some wonder instead.
yeah. Well, we started with the physical, but we went right into the spiritual and the emotional. Maybe in the emotional is where we
Yeah,
worked.
that's
So
true
we
too.
we did both. So, or all of the above. All righty. Well, thank you so much. We'll see you next time, Julia.
All right. Thanks, Steve.
All righty. Well, that Julia Stubbe did a great job with just helping me to release that energy that I had stored up. I knew I wanted to release that energy, and but we need help. We need guides. We need people that kind of can nurture us through. Just like saying I guess saying you want to release it is like a good first step. But if you can have somebody that can kind of focus your attention on specific areas, that's where it was most helpful for me. So all righty, well, that's it. Tomorrow I will be back here. Sean Bracy is our guest, and we're going to talk about creating better messaging, and putting out your best messages if you are somebody who is doing work in the inspirational or motivational, and specifically for speakers is who Sean specializes in. So look forward to that conversation. I'll see you all tomorrow.